Am I on? Okay. Good to see you here. Hope you had a good day. Hope you got to celebrate Mama's Day and had a good time there. Again, thank you for coming back. I know it would have been easier just to, hang out and visit a little more. But we're glad to be here tonight. We're glad to have our guest here tonight. And so we're going to sing a few songs, and then we'll have our guest speaker tonight. So I hope that, you'll just pray that God would use this service in a special way. Live stream, we have a missionary tonight, so hopefully we can get everything to work the way it should, and you'll be able to see what we see, and you'll learn some things about Zambia, Africa. So we are looking forward to that. So we're going to go to the Lord in a word of prayer, and then we're going to sing, and then Brother Mickeal will come and share with us what God has laid on his heart. Father, we thank you so much for this day. We again thank you so much for our mothers. We thank you for those who are dedicated to lifting up their children to you and dedicating them to you. And God, we're just so thankful that kids are still growing up in godly homes and being taught the truth from your word, and just what a difference that makes in their lives. Father, we ask your blessings on this service tonight, and we thank you so much for allowing us to be here. And we just pray that we'll worship you in spirit and in truth, and we'll worship you as we sing your praises, and then we'll worship you as we listen to the work that is going on far away from us. And so, God, we just ask your blessings tonight, and just may your spirit speak to our hearts. And we just give you all the honor and glory and praise for all you continue to do. God, you're so good to us, and we're so thankful for that. We love you and praise you in Jesus' name.
Would you please stand and join us? Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Where sin runs deep, your grace is more. Where grace is found is where you are. Where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. So teach my soul to rise to you. temptation comes my way, when I cannot stand or fall on you, Jesus, you're my hope and stay. When I cannot stand or fall on you, Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Change my heart, oh God, make it ever true. Change my heart, oh God, may I be like you. You are the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me, this is what I pray. Change my heart, oh God, make it ever true. Change my heart, oh God, may I be like you.
And thank you, ladies, congregation, for the wonderful music. Trust that you have been blessed already. Again, we are very glad to have Brother Mickeal Quillman, and his name is not spelled like most Michaels are, and he explained that to me. And then his wife Sharon is with us tonight, and granddaughter Addie. So, man, I did good tonight. I didn't even have a nap, and I did good, because oftentimes I'm not real good with names. But anyway, but we are glad to have them. They are about to have two more added to their family with as far as grandchildren go. So they've got one in the hospital as we speak, right? And then one in June. And so they're going to have some additions to their family, and so pretty excited about that. So, Brother Mickeal, you come and you just share with us as God leads you. God bless you, brother. Glad to have you tonight.
Well, good evening. Thank you guys so much for having us. As Brother Glenn had said, my name's Mickeal. My wife Sharon, my granddaughter Addie that's here. To explain a little bit, as I explained to the pastor, the reason my name is spelled so funny, my family is of Norse descent. So they came down. I used to say they immigrated into Ireland, but they really didn't immigrate. They come over on Viking ships and immigrated the other people off of their homes into theirs. So that's a little bit about our family. But let me see here. So we started out as missionaries, just with another purpose. I hit the right button. Here are some of my kids. I've got my oldest son will be to your right. That's Michael the third with his wife Maggie. My son-in-law Ronnie, there in the center with my baby girl Caitlin, who is Addie's mom, and she will be having a baby anytime now. So we're hoping for tomorrow morning. And then my youngest son, Matthew, there, and his wife's not pictured. This was taken before they were married back in the fall about a year or so ago, and they are expecting a grandbaby for us as well coming up. Name's going to be Isla Kate. We were supposed to be going back to Zambia in June. My son called me and said, Dad, the due date's June 26th, and I did not want to go back to Africa without my wife because Nana was not going to go without seeing this grandbaby born. But yeah, just a little bit about us and about Africa. Here's your church here, Garner Missionary Baptist Church. Pulled this up here on the map. And so just in case any of you guys ever want to hop over and visit us, it's just a short little car ride. The other side of the world, that's right. It's about 8,500 miles or so, 8,450 miles. That's as the crow flies. So it's a straight shot. So you can see there. It's not that difficult. A couple tanks of gas, I think you could make it. But Mangweta Village there, this is our first church plant. This little village that we went into, we were able to go in and begin to teach and disciple the people within this village. But here is where Zambia is. I've talked to several of you tonight, and you guys are missionary minded. I love it. You all have friends or coworkers or family that are all over the world. But here's Zambia. We're a landlocked country. We are surrounded by actually 8 countries. Some of the smaller countries are not shown on there, like Malawi and a couple others. So being landlocked brings a little bit of a challenge to us. People all the time are wanting to ship us items or to send shipping containers. You're welcome to ship them. We're not going to get them. We'll get the container, but that's about it. Because by the time that they arrive in Mozambique or Tanzania and cross that port there, by the time we get the containers, they're empty. You can send things via mail by the Postal Service or by FedEx, but one of the things that you'll find out about Zambia, we don't have mailboxes and we don't have zip codes. We had a church, is it 2 years ago now? Year and a half? Yeah, December of 2020, mailed a book to us. It cost them just over $700 to mail one book. We're still waiting on it. It has not arrived. But that's just some of the challenges. One of the other things, anything that comes in on the port is hit with a 25% tariff from whatever port country, and that's MSRP. Then when it's transferred across the border into Zambia, Zambia hits you with another 25% tariff on the MSRP. So it doesn't matter if it's 100 years old, whatever it would cost brand new, that's how much the tariff is calculated. So it does bring a lot of difficulties. Zambia is in the top 20 most impoverished countries in the world this year due to the rainy seasons hitting just a little bit sooner than expected. They're expecting that we're going to lose about 20% of our population this year due to famine. But this is Zambia. We're at about 18.4 million people. Is anybody here from Texas? Not from okay, good. Zambia is a little bit bigger than Texas. I spent a lot of time in Texas here recently, and I can't tell you how many times I've been booed when I say that Zambia is a little bit bigger. But so if I'm in Texas or have a lot of Texans, I say they're about the same size. Because if you don't know it, there's nothing bigger than Texas when you're in Texas. But that's Zambia. And the city we're operating out of is a little city by the name of Livingston. Now, that name may sound familiar to some of you. Dr. David Livingstone. This is the city back when it was Greater Rhodesia, which is Zimbabwe and Zambia today. Prior to the Civil War, Dr. David Livingstone was the first white missionary to step foot in this part of Africa and begin to do a mission work, which did a lot of good for these countries that are there. In fact, Dr. David Livingstone, in case you don't have a little bit of information about him, when he passed away, it was his wishes that his body be buried in Zambia, in Greater Rhodesia. The Queen wouldn't allow it, so his family had his heart removed, and his heart is buried in Zambia, right next to Victoria Falls, because he wanted the people to know that his heart were for the people of Africa. In fact, his epitaph and what's shown there in Zambia at Victoria Falls and what is at Westminster Abbey, where his body is at, it part of the prayer that's on there is that God would raise up men and women from America, from England, and other parts of the world to help heal this wound that is in the center of Africa. And so for us, this is very important because we are operating on the prayers from 200 years ago. So it's just really neat to be part of that. And as you can see, Livingston, the population is pretty close to the size of Little Rock, but we're about twice the size, square miles. There we go. Here's Victoria Falls. Anybody ever seen Victoria Falls, visited Victoria Falls? If you've ever watched a movie that had a waterfall that was not Niagara Falls, it's Victoria Falls. Victoria Falls is about twice the size of Niagara Falls as far as height. This was taken at the end of our rainy season, and you can see the water coming over there very quickly. In the top left-hand corner, you kind of see that mist. Those aren't clouds. That's called Mosio Atunya, which means the smoke that thunders. So our house is about 20 minutes from here. And so anytime you're outside after the rainy season, it always sounds like it's thundering. And it's the water coming over the waterfalls. So it's very loud. It has created its own during the rainy season. It has its own little rainforest that has grown up around it. We're sub-Saharan. Majority of our villages do not look like this. It's very dusty. It's very sandy. But because of the mist that rises up from Victoria Falls, it's created its own little ecosystem. One of the other things it's created is because of that, I didn't know that for many years, but citrus grows year-round as long as it's watered. And so in this area, mangoes and oranges and any kind of citrus fruit that you can think of will continue to bear fruit because of the mist coming up from the falls. Now, during the dry season, one of the things that's interesting is the falls will almost completely dry up, so much that you can actually walk along this cliff face where the water's coming over. You can walk over on dry ground, right on the edge, look over the edge, and out in the center there's a pool of water that swirls. They call it the Devil's Pool, and so I'm wanting to, in the dry season, I'm wanting to go out there and baptize some people so I can change it to God's pool. But I haven't had any takers yet because when you get in the water, it goes up to about chest deep, and you walk right up to the edge of where the pool is, and when you look down, you're looking down 1,000 feet or better. So if you guys ever want to make a trip to Zambia, come in the dry season. I'll get you in there, and we'll help me baptize some folks. May have to have you help me drag them in there. But here's some of our wildlife. These are actually just photos off my wife's phone. The hippo, the elephant, the giraffe over there. These are animals that we've taken pictures of just outside of our villages. The tree there in the center is known as the baobab tree or the baobab tree. It's one of the oldest trees in Africa. That's me standing there in the center in that blue shirt holding a little girl. It takes about 15 men to hold hands to get around the base of this tree. It's a very dense wood. One of the things I did find interesting is, I don't know if you can see that deer stand. That's what I would have called it, as a deer stand, but it's not. It's an observation tower. And after I got about halfway up, I realized they didn't build that for Americans that look like me. They built it for Zambians that are about 5'3", weigh about 120 pounds. So I went ahead and made my way up there. And when I got down, the Zambians that were there were scared to death because they just knew I was going to die. So if you ever go, if you're my size, you may want to avoid that. Let me go back one here. There we go. This is our Zambian target. This is where we begin to get our fabric. There's a dress out on the table out front that's made from this material called shitinge. It's a 6-meter long piece of fabric. The cool thing about it, we use it for everything. We make clothes. My shirts that I wear over there are made from the same material. The brighter the color and the more it mismatches, the better. So men that do not know how to match clothing, yes, you fit right in. I'm colorblind. And so my whole life, either my mom or my wife has had to match my clothes. I could care less. If they're mismatched in bright colors, you can have stripes and plaids and everything else that goes against all the rules here in the States, and you're fine. And then this is one of our meals. This is a traditional village meal. The white thing that looks like mashed potatoes on the top is not mashed potatoes. It's a product called shima. It's made from ground corn. Y'all ever had malta meal, anything like that, cream of wheat? Very much like that. It's like a porridge, but they continue to add the ground corn until it becomes the consistency of Play-Doh. And you eat everything with your hands. We don't have utensils in the villages. And so you would pick up this shima, and you would just begin to roll it in a ball. It's almost flavorless, and it's about like eating Play-Doh. But one of the things in their culture, as you begin to roll this, the longer you roll it in your hand, the more honor that you are giving to the cook. And so there are some days, depending on who prepared the shima, I am honoring that person for a long time, continuing to roll that shima around in my hand as much as I can. And then on the plate, we also have kapenta, which is the fish. They're on the bottom right. Any fishermen in here? Yeah, those are minnows. That's basically what they are. It's dried fish. Down there on the bottom left, it's boiled cabbage and greens, and if they have tomatoes, they'll have a plant there that grows. It's kind of like a collard green, but it's called rape. Very good, very nutritional. So it's just an enjoyable meal, isn't it, babe? The cabbage is wonderful. And then there's Binkubala. But this is us making shima. That's not us, of course. You can tell that's not me. But that's one of our ladies in the village, and this is how we do all of our cooking there outside. This is them preparing these leafy greens. This is what they call rape. There, it grows wild. They also farm it there in the villages. It has a lot of iron, magnesium. It has a lot of vitamins that they can't get otherwise. This only grows in the middle of the rainy season. After that, it just dries up. And then this is where we get our fish. This is the fish market. 99% of the fish we get is dried fish. Even though we have rivers and ponds and lakes and all of these things where people could catch fish, the government has come in and has made it illegal to fish these waters. They've said that they have been overfished. So if you pay several thousands of dollars in what they call tips, here in the States we would call them bribes, you can get a contract to go fish, and they will go out there with nets and boats and collect up all of these fish and take them into the market. And the villagers who have the Zambezi River running right through their village are not allowed to go out and fish. It comes with a 1-year prison sentence for every fish that you have caught. So if you were to catch a net full of these small kapenta fish, that's basically a death sentence. It's also an 8-hour walk from the villages into this city to purchase the fish. And this is on the plate. My wife mentioned it. I'll go back. The little black thing there on the top of the shima is called Binkubala. That is the mopani worm. That's where majority of the protein comes from. It's very difficult to get animals to eat. It's illegal for the villagers to hunt without a license. Again, the licenses only come through the government by tips. And most of the people in our villages live on less than 41 cents a day if they have a craft or they have extra things that they can sell. So the mopani worm, we purchase them in the villages, in the cities, in the market. They come just like this. They're dried. They actually taste very good. That was my wife's plate, by the way, which is why she only had a couple of the vinkuala on her plate. Yes. Typically, I'll have 60 or 70 of those on my plate. I'll carry them in my pockets around. You eat them like peanuts. They taste, honestly, it's not a lie, they taste just like bacon. So she'll eat those before she eats the fish because the fish are looking at her. But they really do. They're very, very high in protein. They're very, very easily sourced. They're not that expensive to purchase them. You purchase them by the kilogram, about a coffee cup size. And so we will take those into the village, and the villagers love it. It's like if I had brought, the best ribeye steak in here this evening, cooked just the way you like it. That's how they feel about these vinkuala. Yes, there are great peanuts that you get. And by the way, I didn't mention this. If you guys have any questions as we're going through, feel free to ask. I'd love to answer any questions that you guys have. I can talk about Zambia all day. Yes. Okay, so it's actually be a 5 kilogram. That's about 1,000 kwacha. Kwacha is almost 18 kwacha to the dollar. So under $10 for 5 kilograms of the caterpillars. Yes. Yeah, we'll divide them out. 5 kilograms will provide. Most of the villages have about 100 to 150 people in them. Some of our larger villages will have 300 to 350 people in the villages. We have 72 different tribes, and then each tribe has several villages that make up a tribe. And so, but yeah, so we'll go in. Oh yeah, I can share with that a little bit. So if you're a man and you go to Zambia, you are loving it. Men eat first. The older pastors, we would eat first. We get the plates of honor, just like in many other places around the world. So like the shima, where a lady may get 2 to 3 scoops of the shima on there, I'm going to get 6 to 7 scoops of that on my plate. Instead of getting 15 to 20 of the caterpillars, I'm going to get 50 to 60 of them on my plate. So the men, the older men that are married, eat first. Then the younger married men eat next. Then the younger unmarried men that are puberty level and above, so 10, 11 and older, eat. Then the older married women eat, the grandmothers. Then the younger married women eat. And then the younger unmarried girls that are under, that are just have reached puberty age. And then whatever is left on your plate gets scraped into a big bowl, and that's what the children eat. And so in their culture, especially for like my wife and others that we bring over on teams, you can just move it around, and so they get what's left. And that's just how they're very much a male-dominated society. The women are not allowed to sit on chairs in the presence of men until every man, even down to an 11-year-old boy, have a seat. The women are required to sit on the ground. And so once all the chairs, all the men are seated, then the women can have a seat. Some of the women will carry around their own chair, especially the oldest grandmothers, 85. I think Ambuya is 86 years old. She will drag her own chair around. But everyone else, the women will sit on their little grass mats. So very, very much a male-dominated society. Any other questions so far? So here are the villages that we're currently working in: Mangweta, Delevu, Chilimbana, and Koma. As I said, 150 to 300 people. These are Tonga, Lozi, Tokelea people. We have 72 different languages. So in Mangweta, they are Tonga. In Delevu, they are Tokelea, Koma, or Lozi. And so someone asked me earlier if I'm preaching in their languages. Not yet. What we have begun to learn is how to speak to the tribal headsmen and to the tribal chiefs in their own language, because most of them will speak the Southern Province language, which is what Nyanja is. That's the language of the Southern Province. But when I walk in to speak to the headman, the person that's overseeing the village, think of it like a governor for that village, and then there's a chief that would be like the president that oversees all the Tonga. So for me to go in, I have to get permission. I go in and I'll speak to the tribal headsman in that village, and I have to speak to him not only in his language but in his dialect. If I do not do that, I am not granted permission to come into their village. So we spend a lot of time learning the formal greetings for each one of these tribal languages, which can get confusing because they're very similar. A lot of times I have to wait and let them speak first so I know what my response should be, and just kind of key off of them. And then once you get permission, then I could revert back and speak Nyanja to them, and they're fine with that. I can even speak to them with a translator. But before that, before we're given permission, if I speak through a translator, we're not going to be given permission because they don't see it as we have taken an effort to honor them in their language. So, and this is what our villages look like. This is the Mangweta village. When I first started traveling to Africa, I was used to Romania and Hungary and some of the places there. I worked with a lot of gypsies in those countries, and their villages were more close-knit. And a lot of their huts were together. Here, they each own their own property, and the fields surrounding them is where they'll grow their food. So you will be about a 45-minute walk for a lot of them from one family group to another within the same village. So it's very spread out. When we go into one village, it usually takes us a week to walk to hit every single hut to go in and speak with these people in the villages. And then this is one of our families. The young lady there on the right, as you can tell, is very, very young. Her real name is Jessica, but because she is married as a man, I cannot call her by her name Jessica. The way that things work there is, so I would have to call her Amaka Fabian. Her child's name is Fabian. So, brother, what was the name of your oldest child? Melanie. And so your wife, I would have to call her Amake Melanie, the mother of Melanie. And the reason for that is it's not to degrade the wife, it's to protect her and to protect the husband, knowing that I haven't developed an intimate relationship with your spouse by knowing and calling and talking to her by her first name. So it's a really cool thing within their culture. And so this would be Amake Fabian. And then this is Ambuya. Any grandmothers here in the house tonight? Anybody, grandma? Yeah, my wife is. If you're a grandmother, you're Ambuya. That just means grandmother. And so it makes it easier. You don't have to know their children. It can get confusing when there's multiple grandmothers in the village and you say Ambuya. You almost know that Ambuya. Know that one over there. But this is Ambuya. She's the oldest person in any of the villages we've visited. She's 86 years old. She's the one that carries her chair around with her everywhere that she goes. She also lives a very, very hard life. She's responsible for plowing her own fields, planting her own food, because in their culture, they do not share. It's one of the things we're working with in the churches to help with that. But if she does not have enough food, they will let her, even her own children that live in the huts around her, will let her starve to death before they would share any other food. And the reason for that is if I give Ambuya food, my child may die and may starve to death. So that's some of the things we're working with the church that we've planted there, teaching the church to give back, especially to the oldest adults in our villages. And then this is how we get water. Some of you had mentioned about the old ratchet wells, the old double pumper wells. These are what we are taking in and putting in the villages. These are the 3 that we've gotten in that are hand pumpers. We've since got a solar panel donated by a church and was able to put in a solar pump and a solar panel. But there in the top middle, that's what they call a seep. We would just call it an old pond or something where the animals are at. You can see how unclean the water is. But without the wells, that's where they're getting their water, or the villages that are close to the Zambezi River, they will walk the hour and a half up to 3 hours down to the river to gather water. The water is much cleaner, but it's a lot more dangerous. We just had a young girl in our village, 12 years old, that was killed by a 16-foot crocodile going down to get water. And that's just one of the girls. That's not something that's abnormal. That happens often between the crocodiles or the hippos. Hippos are the most dangerous animal in all of Africa. Very, very territorial. And so when we come in and we're able to put a well in a village, wherever we put that well becomes our community point. It almost becomes our woman at the well moment. And so we're able to sit around and have conversations and talk about this clean water and explaining to them why we are giving them water, why we are there, loving on them because Christ first loved us. And so it not only gives them the life-saving water, and it helps with all of the diseases that can come from these other water sources, it protects them from the animals. It's very deep. We're at 4,000 feet elevation, not as deep as it was in New Mexico. Is that where you said you were at? But we put these 3 wells, we put in at 50 meters, which was what they had suggested for us to put 150 feet close, somewhere around there. They're not near deep enough. They'll stay full of water during the rainy season. About 3 months in, after the rainy season's over, they dry up. So we are going to be putting them in at 150 to 200 meters. So that we can get a water table up there. They're about $4,000 a well for a bore. It's just a bore hole. But the way that it works, I mentioned the headman. So when I go into a village and I offer to put a well in, the very first thing I have to do is I have to go to the headman and I have to put a well in at his house, at his property, before I can put one in for the villagers. Even if the headman, because we've got some of these headmen that we have worked with that are very great, even if they say, no, you don't have to put one in at my place, you can just put it in for the village, the villagers will not accept that. They will not respect that they cannot have anything greater than their headman. So for every well we put in, it runs us $8,000 to $10,000 because we have to put in 2. We have 2 companies in the entire country of Zambia that will put in bore wells for us. We've been trying to work with Water for Christ. I don't know if you guys are familiar with those guys, Tim and those guys out of Conway. The problem is all of their equipment is up in Ghana. And with us being a landlocked country to where we don't have our own ports, it's almost impossible for them to get the equipment there. So I met with Tim at the national meeting a couple weeks ago. He's going to fly over there with me, and because he's in that business and he knows how to deal those, he is going to try to work with one of those companies and say, if you will give us a lower rate, then I will use, every time I put something in Southern Africa, I will use your company. And so he's going to try to negotiate something like that for us. As you can see, the kids carrying the buckets on their head. I have tried this many times. I have no idea how they're able to do that. We watched one little girl. They're in the middle of nowhere. We have no electricity, but they all have phones, which is so strange. You will have found somebody that will have taken apart like one of those little solar lights, and they will have 50 wires stretched out, and they'll be charging people to charge their phones. And so they'll have the batteries pulled out, and they'll lick their fingers and touch the wires to the battery, and they'll get them charged. But I watched one little girl. She had, it was basically a 5-gallon bucket. She was walking up on the hill. No hands on the bucket, both hands on the phone. I would have spilt that thing the first step. But they start carrying water at 3 years old. And as my wife always points out, every time we're there, I get the kids in trouble. Any of the American teams do, because when a 3 or 4-year-old kid is around, what do you want to do? You want to play with them, right? You want to hug them. You want to hold them. You want to do that. Well, Mom has sent them out from the hut an hour and a half away to go get water and bring it back. And when they're still not back because they're playing soccer with the Americans, Mom is usually not very happy. So when that happens, we will tend to carry the water back for them. But this is one of the ways that they make money there. This is charcoal. It takes about 6 days to make charcoal. They cut trees down. They'll drag them into the middle. They'll start the fire. They cover them in mud and grass and things like that. And then they'll begin their journey with the load that's there in the top center. That'll take him about 10 hours to get from the village into the city to sell that. You can see about the size of the bags of charcoal. I always like to just get people to ask, how much do you think each one of those bags sell for? $1.15 is what they get out of each one of those. So they'll work 6 days. They'll make up what you can see there. They'll carry those 8 to 10 hours into the city, buy the fish. They'll buy the kapenta. They'll buy the worms, the vinkuala. They'll buy corn, and then they will make that walk back. The ground corn. And then they have a bag to take back with charcoal. So some of them that are that have been doing this for a while will get bicycles. As you can see, those guys, if they can get bicycles, it's very valuable for them. But the bike there on the bottom left will run them about $350 US, because that is considered a luxury item. You don't have to have a bicycle to live. So it's very, very expensive. And then this is the way that we begin our ministry there. 4-stage process. It's not anything I made up. This is what Jesus did. Love, walk, lead. We want to love the people of Zambia, walk alongside them as we lead them to Christ. And we just begin this 4 stages of come and see, follow me, go and fish, and then bear much fruit, which is what Jesus did with his disciples. And this is where we begin our very first door as we walk into the villages. We get permission from the headman. We begin to bring in dresses and shoes for the kids. Now, you can see these kids all have their dresses on over their clothes. That's not what they would normally wear, but we had just given them these dresses, so they immediately wanted to put them on. And so the girls and then the boys under the age of 10 will all wear these dresses. It's nothing culturally to shame them about having a boy in a dress. In fact, they're in the very center picture, the young man in the little yellow dress. He doesn't look real happy. That's not because he's in a dress. What he's mad about is he was spinning in circles, making his dress flow out, and Mom made him stop so we could take the picture. And so for them, culturally, it's nothing wrong for a young man until he hits puberty to wear a dress. For them, it's clothes. And then the shoes that we take in, those shoes are called because shoes. Are y'all familiar? Have y'all heard of the because shoes? Okay, they're made from recycled car tires, so they're almost indestructible, and they also grow 5 sizes. So one child can have one pair of sandals, and it will last them the next 5 sizes. They have straps and hooks that cause them to expand. And then when they outgrow that from their 5th size up, they can put them back down to the smaller size and give them to someone else, and they'll move up to a larger size. And most of the time, they run around barefooted, and so why do they need shoes? Well, they have this thing there called a goat head. It's about the same. Y'all familiar with goat heads? Okay. Size of a quarter, has these big spurs on them. Yes, yeah. And so they will flatten a tire, and they're getting them in their feet. The problem is they've developed such calluses that a lot of times they may not feel it at first. Works it in, it festers, and because their medical care they're so poor, they'll get an infection, and they will have to begin to amputate at the foot, at the knee, at the hip, until they can get rid of the infection. And so for us to take in these shoes and these dresses, that's one of the first ways that we expose them to this is just love. When they come in, there is no expectation from them. We don't do a gospel presentation that day. We don't show a Jesus film. We don't have a church service. All we do on this first day is just give them that because we love them. We don't want them to think that they need to make a decision or say yes to anything we're telling them about Jesus to receive this. Zambian culture, nothing is free. So this is their first introduction to seeing what free is. And what I mean by nothing is free, in the U.S. we say that too. It's a little bit different there. If you're driving in the city and you go to pull into a parking space, a gentleman's going to run out and stop you, and he's going to say, you're about to hit the curb, right? And then when you get out, even though you wasn't going to hit the curb, he's going to have his hand out, and you're expected to pay him. Then he will say, I'll watch your car while you go into the market. No, I don't want you to watch my car. No, I'll watch your car so nobody breaks in. And if you don't pay him, he's going to be the one that breaks into your car. So everything like that's just expected. That's it's just their culture. And so when we come in and we give them these dresses and we give them these shoes, and we want nothing in return, that opens the door, because we'll begin to tell them, hey, usually it's 2 days later. 2 days later, we're going to come back and we're going to show a film, or we're going to have a service. You're invited to come. You don't have to come. But then we begin to share with them the free gift that only Jesus can provide. And so it begins to click for them. And then somebody, yeah. Most of those come from the U.S. We have ladies all over the country that are making those. They are called Dress a Girl Around the World. You can either purchase them online. Online, they sell those dresses for about $20 a piece. But for $20 worth, you saw those are pillowcase dresses. You can make 5 or 6 dresses. And so what we do is we have people that are willing to purchase material, make the dresses. They just need to be bright colored, have 2 pockets on the front, and be like a sundress type thing because of the heat. And then when we have teams come over, we'll let those ladies know that are making these dresses, this is the church, and they'll mail them to that church, and the church will put them in their suitcases and take them over with them. That way we don't have to worry about not being able to get them shipped. So it usually goes over in suitcases. We have had a few people that have said, I can't sew, but here's $100 to go towards the dresses. I still don't go online and buy those dresses. I'll turn around and give that $100 to one of our ladies that are making them and say, make me $100 worth of dresses. Yeah, somebody will pay for the extra. And most of it's cotton. I mean, we just want to make pretty much everything out of cotton. But you'll see these guys after an election, they'll go through the city and rip down the flags and the banners and turn those into dresses. You'll see women walking around with the former president, on her backside, his face. Yep. And so they'll use just about anything, but we know cotton breathes and it works better. But good question. So if any of you in your church love to sew, get with me. My card's back there have our information because those dresses are very, very valuable. The shoes, however, we can't make. They come from a company called Because. They're $20 a pair if you're taking them overseas to a missions field. If you want a pair for yourself, because they make them all the way up in adult sizes, it's just going to be like the Bob's and the Tom's shoes. They're going to charge you $40. They're going to take the other $20 and give a pair to a missionary to take over. We do have some churches that have. The church in Jonesboro just sent us 300 pairs over back in November when we were there, June. So, and they just began a little collection. I think their Vacation Bible School and their Sunday school just started collecting monies until they got enough to purchase shoes. And then when you order the shoes, they actually put them in a international carrying case already. And so they're all bagged up, matched up in a bag, and we can take them right on the plane that way. Yeah. And by doing that, what that does as a guest when you're coming over, then that gives you an empty suitcase to take souvenirs home. At least that's how we sell it. But no, the only thing that it will cost us is I will meet you at the airport because when you land, you have to pay tips to get your luggage off the carousel. Otherwise, the government officials that are working there won't allow you to have your suitcases. And it can be something little. We take in the little Bible sticks that have the Bible on them. That they were made for the military. Now they're in 800 and something different languages. It can be something as simple as that. I gave 5 of their TSA guys each one of those little MP3 players, and they were fine. They didn't know that I was giving them the Word of God. They just thought they were getting an MP3 player. Yeah. We have one gentleman. Usually if you get a job, you're going to work that job till you die. They're not going to quit. They're not going to transfer jobs because jobs are so hard to come by. And so we have one gentleman. It's the same one every time. I've made a really good relationship with him. I know his family. I know his kids. I know how many kids. And so this last trip, I gave each one of his kids a pair of these sandals. And not only does it allow us to get our suitcases, when we go to cross the border, he's already called ahead and told them not even to look at our stuff, just to let us through. So, yeah, a lot of times we end up having to fly into Zimbabwe, and then Zimbabwe is very poor as well. But again, it's just part of their culture. Here's the second thing, the come and see. This is where we asked them. We were just into this village taking shoes and dresses. As you can see from the buildings, these are a little bit different than the traditional huts. These are government schools. The government came in and actually built these buildings because in this village during the rainy season, once the rainy season hit, the Zambezi River gets out and it cuts them off from the rest of the world. And so their teachers will come in and live in these houses to teach for up to 3 or 4 months because you can't get in and you can't get out. So the government, they did get a grant. It was actually the president the time before that was running for election, and he was trying to get villager votes. So he took some of the massive amounts of stockpiles of money that the government has and built these to try to get their vote. And the joke was on him. They still voted for the other guy. Sounds like our government. But yeah, so we brought them in there and we showed the Jesus film. This night, I think we had just over 100 that ended up showing up. Zambian time is a little bit different. If you've lived in America's South, if you've been around the Hispanic culture at all, you know that they operate on a little bit different time schedule, and that's not a racial stereotype. Maybe it is a little bit, but they operate on a different time. And so there it is as well. If I say that I'm going to begin the Jesus film at 7 p.m., if they get there by 9 p.m., they're on time for them. On Sunday mornings, when we begin church, we actually start singing 2 hours before church starts so that the people in the villages begin to hear, and they will begin to make their way to the building to have church service. And so we started out with the small group that you can see there in the top left, and it grew to the one on the bottom. By the end of the night, we had just over 100 watching the Jesus film. The cool thing was we had 87 come down for salvation that night because it was the first time that they had heard Jesus. Now let me back up a little bit. Talked about David Livingstone, great missionary. If you walk through the cities of Livingston, Lusaka, Kitwe, any of those larger cities, and you ask them, are you a Christian? Their answer will be yes. But when you dig a little bit deeper and you say, tell me about your relationship with Jesus Christ, they'll say, who is that? Who is Jesus? Well, how are you a Christian? Dr. David Livingstone said that we were a Christian nation. It's not unlike many of our places in the South, where it's the good old boy system. And so that's not what Dr. David Livingstone's intention was. That wasn't his heart. The problem was there was no follow-up, there was no discipleship, there was no truth that had continued. So all they know is 150, 200 years ago, Dr. David Livingstone in 1830s said, you're a Christian nation. And so for us, when we're going through the cities, we always have to take it to the next level. You can't say, are you a Christian? Because they believe they are. Now, in the villages, it's very different. Everything there is witch doctor driven. It's animism, worship of the ground, worship of plants, trees. It's a very, very evil thing. It's very satanic. They're still doing forced marriages. If the girls have not learned English by the time that they're 12 years old, their fathers will then go to another village, get them a husband, usually an older man, 40 to 50 years old. He will come into the village, give her a child, and then go back to his other 3 or 4 wives in his other village and leave all of these young ladies as single moms for the rest of their life. And these girls are 11, 12 years old. And so that's one of the things that the witch doctor perpetuates. They also perpetuate child rape because they teach that that is the only way that a man can get rid of HIV. 85 to 90% of our villages are all HIV positive because of that. So there's a lot of evil that we're having to overcome. There we go. And this is where we begin to walk. As I talked about, the witch doctors are very evil. So up here in the top right, we were beginning to clear some land to put our second church in the village of Delevu. And where we're circled up here about to pray, I had just killed a king cobra. We have over 72 different variety of venomous snakes. Cobras are very, very rampant and abundant there. And so as we were sending around, there's a couple of people in there in this circle that are even with us praying that are children of the witch doctor. So anything that we do, the witch doctor sends plants in trying to get us to speak evil of the witch doctor so that we get kicked out of the village. So word made it back that there were some king cobras that had showed up where we were clearing the land for the church. So the witch doctor came and said that he had cast those king cobras upon us to kill us, to get rid of us white Americans. So I took my machete and I cut the head off of the cobra, and I turned around and sent it to the witch doctor and said, my God says that he crushed the head of the serpent. And so then we had a prayer time, and that place where we killed the cobras in this area, this is where we began to have our first church service, was right in that same area where the cobras. So any other questions so far? Anything spark your interest? Or oh, let me show you this one. This is one of our church services. Go back one. As you can tell, I'm pretty technological. So as you can see, their feet play a big role in the instrumentation. Did y'all notice the soccer cleats on the one young man, the Nike soccer cleats? They play a lot of soccer there. So we had a gentleman that came over from the States. He brought those to give him those cleats so that he could play soccer. He won't wear them except to church. They're that valuable to him. He doesn't want them to be destroyed or broken down, so he wears those cleats to church. And when he leaves the church building, he will take them off and carry them back to his hut because it's such an honor to him that somebody gave him that gift. It also adds to the acoustics of our music by having the cleats. But in our church services, as I said, they'll begin singing 2 hours before church starts. At 10 a.m., they'll all go outside and line up and march in. That's our worship team. They'll begin singing. They'll sing for another hour to hour and a half. I'll get up and preach hour to hour and a half. When I'm done preaching, we'll do invitation time, and then we'll have a 45-minute so of testimony time, and then they'll sing again for another hour or so. And then, women on one side of the building, men on the other. Children all sit over with the women on their side. And so, again, that's our culture. As you can see, the fabric on the windows, that's the same thing that we make our clothes out of. That's the Shatinge material. And then this is our school. I mentioned one of the things of getting the kids to learn English. The language, it's a former British colony, Zambia is, and so the national language is English. So in the cities, they speak English, but in the villages, they don't. To attend a government school, you have to be fluent in English. It also is very expensive. It costs them about $1,500 a semester. Again, these people are making 41 cents to 55 cents a day. In the villages. So what the schools have become is the government officials' children are the only ones that are going to the public schools. And after the public schools, they qualify for university, and university, again, is free. And so very, very corrupt system. Zambia itself has a lot of money. It's the largest exporter of copper in the world. But none of that money goes to the individuals. If you work in the copper mine, which typically they'll take a truck out to the village, gather up all the men, take them into the copper mines. 16-hour shift is 91 cents a day to work in the copper mines, and you work that 6 days a week. The life expectancy working in the copper mine is 5 to 7 years just because of the conditions. But this is one of our schools, and so we begin at 3 years old and go all the way up to 11 or 12. We just put our first village girl into a government school this year, so we're excited for that. She won't be sent in through a forced marriage, and so we're very excited. The woman in the green shirt, that's Bridget. She's our preschool teacher. She's fluent in English. She teaches ages 3 to 5, and then the woman in the middle, her name is Mercy, and she is our head school teacher. And so if you ever come to our village and you want to know where the kids are at, whether in alphabet or counting, just drive your vehicle up there and park it. In about 5 minutes, it will be written all over on the alphabet and on the numbers, because they have nothing else to write on other than writing in the dirt and things like that. So we always know, we'll look at it and go, oh, yeah, you're through the letter D this week, because it'll say A, B, C, D all over the truck, and so it's really neat. When we were there in June, they were up to the letter D. In November, they had made it up to the letter J. And then by January, they were all the way through to the letter Z, which is very, very cool for us. They'd also learn to count to 20. One of the things I shared with the men out there is I grew up doing construction with my dad. My dad was a bivocational pastor my whole life. And so I decided to make this little 3-shelf bookshelf. Should have taken me about 45 minutes. But the kids, as I said, had just learned to count to 20.
Very good.
So every measurement, we had the kids counting 1 to 18 with us, and then I would turn to another child and say, I need 1 screw in English, and they would say, here is your 1 screw. Then I'd turn to another kid, and I'd say, I need the drill, and he would go, screwdriver. I need the drill. Here is the drill. And then we need to pull the trigger. We must pull the trigger. And then the kid who was putting pressure, I must push the drill. And so this was about a 4.5-hour project for this little bookshelf, but it was a teachable moment. It was about helping these kids learning to interact. So it was a lot of fun. and we gave the bookshelf was actually for the teachers to store some of their supplies on. One of the last stories I'll share with you, and then I'll open it up for questions. This woman that's sitting in the wheelbarrow, her name is Precious. Her sons in the background are Joshua and Mickeal. The little girl sitting on her lap is Mwaka. Now, one of the things that we've been working on there is you can go in as a missionary and you can go really wide and you can plant a lot of churches. You can lead a lot of people to Christ, which is awesome. But there needs to be some discipleship. And so for us, as we're going through, we're trying to focus in on 2 or 3 villages to raise up pastors, to train them what it means to be a pastor, what it means to understand the doctrine and the theology. Because what happens so many times in Zambia is you'll have a missionary will come in, will preach the gospel, someone will be saved, they'll give them a small salary to begin preaching. They've never had any kind of training whatsoever. And for us, the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses come right in behind, and they will now double the salary of that man and convert them over to their cultish religion. And so for us, we don't want that. My goal is to never pastor a Zambian church. My goal is to raise up pastors who can then send out missionaries to other villages to help train people to pastor. And so with that being said, Precious, she's about, an hour? Yeah, so about an hour from Migueta, about 40 kilometers, had heard some of the things that God was doing in the villages we were in. And this wasn't a village that we were ready to go to yet. Again, I want to share the gospel with everybody, but that was my plans. So her daughter that's sitting on her lap, her name is Mwaka. She was born very disabled. She can't talk, has a hard time hearing, has a hard time seeing. She's in immense pain anytime she has to move around. So this wheelbarrow that Precious is sitting in is Mwaka's home. She lives in the wheelbarrow. That's not out of cruelty. That's because anytime they have to pick her up to move her, it hurts her so bad. And so it's actually a blessing that she had this. And so her mom is able to move her around with the wheelbarrow. So Precious had sent word and asked us to come pray for Mwaka. When we got there and began to talk to her, we found out that she had been kicked out of the village because she had given birth to a disabled child. So something must be wrong with her because she gave birth to a disabled child. This is one of the poorest villages I've ever been in. Almost all of the men have deserted this village because they are so poor. They've left the women and children to fend for themselves. Many of them are starving to death. So through several conversations with Precious and praying with her and praying from Mwaka, Precious became saved. Now again, this woman is an outcast. Her culture looks down on her, not just her village, but all of their society because of the disabled child. Precious then walked us into her village. It was about an 1.5 to 2 hour walk from where she lives into the village center. And she went around to every hut along the way and asked them to come to the village center so that they could hear what it is we were sharing with her. It was our woman at the well meeting of come see a man who told us everything that I ever did. Not that I'm Jesus, but we were offering this gift of Jesus Christ. And through that, my plan was not to get there yet, maybe five years, get to her village. We go there, and because of the poverty level within this village, they don't have a head man. So I don't have to pay those tips and those bribes to get involved with them. They also don't have a witch doctor because the witch doctor deserted them because they were so poor. And so this village is wide open for us to begin. This will be our 3rd church plant now, all because of the faith of Precious, which both of her boys made professions of faith as well. Her husband, she does have a husband, but he had went into another part of the country to find work, which means he may or may not come back. But because of her faith and the things that she was willing, even as an outcast, hundreds of people in her village are going to come to Christ. When we began to share the gospel with them, they just gathered around in a circle, and we were just able to share the gospel for hours with these people. And so for us, it's being open. That wasn't my plan, but being faithful to be obedient to what the Holy Spirit is leading us to do, whatever we're doing. But that's kind of our story of what we're doing. That's how we operate. That's what we're doing. Our goal there is to make disciples who can make disciples who can make disciples. I want our villagers being missionaries to the villagers so that I can move to another province or another country We know with the training classes, it's a minimum of 2 to 3 years to take these men through these classes. But we're ready to do whatever God has called us to do. So, questions? Yeah, so I shared that out in the foyer earlier. There's 10 books in there. It's 520 credit hours. It's a massive study, 2 to 3 years. But by the time that you take the men from books 1 through 5, once they graduate book 5, they begin teaching others back at books 1 through 5 as I'm teaching them books 6 through 10. And so it becomes very, very reproducible for them to begin to teach. And they will actually be able to teach it quicker than I can because we're not having to go through different translators as well. First thing is prayer. First and foremost, praying that God opens the doors. Secondly is either partnering with us, monthly support, or making dresses or purchasing shoes, sending over supplies that, as teams are coming over. That's the best way for us to get things. To get a whiteboard, we bought 2 whiteboards for Christmas for our 2 teachers. Over there, if you buy them, they're about $150 a piece. So we had some teams that come in and brought them in their suitcases. Chalk, it's very easy because some of the rock surfaces we have there, they can write with chalk on a lot of different things. So even just getting chalk is very, very helpful. Sponsoring and partnering, maybe doing fundraisers to help with wells, anything like that, not just monetary, but even as supplies are coming over, maybe it's a fundraiser with your children or through Vacation Bible School to purchase shoes, or finding some ladies that can sew. I'm not a sewer, but I can sew those dresses. They're very easy. Yeah, we're also building. We have 1 school built now. We'll be doing another school. We have people that sponsor our teachers. We pay them 1,000 kwacha a month. It's about $65 US. That's their salary. We pay them a little bit better. Mercy, the 1 school teacher, she walks 2.5 hours twice a day, every day from her village to Mingweta village to teach. And so we have some people here in the States who sponsor them so that we can continue to pay for them. We have some people that are sponsoring students. It's $35 a month to sponsor a student for us to help provide meals for them while they're at school. We have some people that are sponsoring purchasing chickens so that we can help show them how to raise chickens properly and actually feed them so that they generate more eggs and things like that. So just about any way that whatever God lays on your heart. And what we found is people have different things that God speaks to them. We have one gentleman, he's a pastor up in Missouri. He loves chickens. He's a chicken farmer. That's what his thing is, that he's sponsoring chickens for us. He's planning a trip over there for us to teach them how to feed their chickens and give their chickens water so that they'll actually lay 1 egg a day. For them, most of their chickens will lay 1, maybe 2 eggs a week because they forage. They don't feed them. Yeah, that's their. So, if you have a special skill, you want to come over and help build. If you want to come over and if you're medical, if you're a veterinarian, whatever it is, if you want to come over and do hut-to-hut evangelism and just pray with people, it's wide open, the opportunities, honestly. Well, most of them are the thatch. The wood they do have, but termites are so rampant. I built a compost box, and in 8 days it was gone. I built it out of wood. The termites completely ate it. So, and almost everything in the cities or even the ministry house that we're going to be building there is going to be made out of concrete. Any wood that's touching the ground, the termites will decimate it. 15 to 16 foot tall termite mounds all over the place. They won't destroy them because they actually eat the dirt because it's very, very high in minerals. So if you are pregnant and you're there, they're going to be feeding you termite mound mud. So instead of, yeah, so instead of a prenatal, you'd be eating termite dirt. Yes. Yeah, they'll use the termite mound mud. That's why most of the buildings that you'll see in Africa are red. It's termite mound mud. And it turns to concrete once you mix it up with a little bit of water and a couple other little ingredients. It's solid. And the termites themselves are a good source of protein. They taste like spicy Pop Rocks because they pop in your mouth when you eat them. So, huh? No, usually not. The bigger ones, if you get the ones with wings, they will. But if you just, you lick the blade of grass and you stick it in the termite hole and you pull it out, they'll be all over it. And you just. She hasn't tried those yet. Yes, yes. So, but as I'm immersing myself in the culture and I'm walking around out there with them, if they're eating termites, I'm gonna eat termites with them. I mean, that's just, it's okay. I grew up eating a lot of dirt. I'm a country boy. So, yes, lots of hot sauce would be great. Yes. Turned out she had a boy. So anyway, but yeah, so I mean, little things like that you don't think about. Most of our shopping, there is a grocery store in Livingston. It's 138,000 people. We have one grocery store. Everything else is market. It's sustainable. It's healthier. Everything's organic. So they don't know where it's organic, but it's all organic. Any other questions I can answer for you? I urge you to come back to the table, look at some of the things back there. They're not for sale. There's always people, they think I'm selling the animals. They're not. They're just to kind of show you some of the trade that the people in the villages do. But the biggest thing for us is prayer, that God would continue to send the Holy Spirit ahead of us. I do believe we're living in the end days, and I know that there's going to be an outpouring of the Holy Spirit, and it may not be in the United States of America, but it's going to be somewhere. And people there are begging to hear the gospel. When I said that I preach for an hour and a half, when I finish preaching, they will start clapping their hands at me and yelling, more, read to us, read the word, preach, because they're so hungry for the word of God. When we take Bibles in, if we find some people in the village who can speak English, I'll take one Bible in and we rip it apart and we give the different books of the Bible to the different families that have somebody in their home that can speak English, and they will begin to read that out loud every day and put it to memory. And then once they've read that so many times, they'll switch with somebody else in the village. So there's such a hunger for the gospel there. The little building that they were marching into, it's probably about the size of this section of pews. We'll stack 80 to 100 people in there, people hanging out in the windows. They'll come sit up on the stage while I'm preaching. The funny thing is even the witch doctors who are trying to do their evil witchcraft, they will stand off and listen. So they don't know it, but God's working on them. So. The first time I met the witch doctor, or was going to meet the witch doctor of Mingweta Village is the first one we went to. They actually have two witch doctors. Their father is the head man, so that already brought in some other things. But I'm just the type of guy, I'm real shy, and so I just walked up to his hut and was going to talk to him. He was the head witch doctor. Well, when I got there, he had ran off. Nobody was there but his wives. He had 6 wives plus all of his children. And I just began to sit down and share the gospel. So you're not going to be here. I'm going to share it with your wife and kids. And through the course of the conversation, I said, so where's the witch doctor? Where's your husband? And they said, oh, he ran off into the woods. Well, why did he run off into the woods? He was scared. Well, I assumed I'm a big guy, right? I'm 6'2", 300 pounds. They're, again, 5 foot, $120. No, you misunderstood. He's not afraid of you. He's afraid of the God that you pray to, because he began to see all the things, yeah, as he should be. So flash forward about 3 months, I get a phone call. And I don't know who it is on the phone that's calling me, but they said the head man had been taken into the city to the hospital. They thought he was going to die. Would I come in and pray with the head man? Of course. I mean, out of respect, one, we've got to do that, but two, I'm going to go pray with him. Again, he's the father of 2 of the witch doctors. When I got there, both the witch doctors were in the hospital room. It was the witch doctor that had called and asked me to come pray for their father, because they had seen that the God that I pray to had more power than their gods that they had been praying to. And so in those moments, I was able to share the gospel with them, pray with them. Now, the witch doctors weren't saved in those moments, but it was just a place to plant seeds. Of course, in my mind, I'm sitting there going, please, God, don't let him die while I'm praying, and he was released from the hospital the next day and went back home. But what that did even more is the people that attend the witch doctor's church and his ceremonies that he did all knew that he had called for us to come pray for their father. And so he lost about 80% of his congregation of followers to come and listen to about the one true God. So God's working. Our prayer is that those witch doctors get saved, because it's generational. If the witch doctors are gone and their sons aren't trained up as witch doctors, no one else can perform the duties of those witch doctors. It has to run. It's a lineage. It's a bloodline. And so once they're saved, and we can get them saved and discipled, the lineage of those witch doctors in that village are done. So, yeah, because so they will say, you have 2 cows. If you don't give me one of your cows, all of your children are going to die of the coughing disease this winter, which is tuberculosis. They'll come back later and say, I know you don't have enough grain to feed your family, but if you don't give me half of your grain, I'm going to pull your family out of what we would consider heaven, and their heaven and hell. It's different, but it's just to put it in those perspectives. I'm going to pull them out of heaven and place them in hell, your ancestors that have been dead for 100 years. And so it's very, very evil. And they rob the villagers blind. And because of the culture, and it's one of the things we even fight with those that become believers, is it's so ingrained in their culture that they will still make those